In this recording, I'm going to keep it very brief because this is information to make you alert for your own safety. So I want to keep it as brief as possible. I want to talk about mass paranoia. Suspicion is when you expect expect that there's something odd going on concerning an individual or a group or a situation. When a suspicion does not have to be something wrong. You can also suspect that something good is going to happen. So suspicion can be both on the negative part or on the positive side. But look at this. When suspicion has no evidence, and suspicion becomes the goal in itself, when suspicion becomes a stronghold, then it has become paranoia. When an individual becomes paranoid, they're not aware they've become paranoid. Paranoia does not develop instantly overnight. It begins with someone detecting real danger or something real that's going on. And after a while, the individual becomes attached to expecting that danger. Or if someone has received upset news, and later they found out it's much deeper than they've expected, if an individual does not process it the right way, the brain becomes overwhelmed with processing all those impulses of danger. What can happen? The individual begins to develop a pattern of expecting the worst. And that's what paranoia is. Paranoia does not have to be in the extreme form that you expect aliens to invade you, or that you expect, for example, the Romans to attack you, that you're so confused in your mind that you've become schizophrenic. No, it doesn't have to be that way. That's the extreme worst part of, not really the worst part, it can be worse, but that is an extreme expression of paranoia. And that's the form of paranoia we can identify as paranoia. But hold on. There's another way paranoia manifests itself, but often we are not aware it's paranoia. And that's what you need to understand. Paranoia is simply that you've been chained spiritually towards a negative outcome. So basically, paranoia is a spell that will work out, that will manifest in a curse. That's what paranoia is. Paranoia is when your thinking is hooked up with a negative pattern, and this is affecting your aura, this is affecting the energy field around you. It is causing all kinds of cracks and holes in your energy field, and this makes you vulnerable to hostile energies and hostile entities, which we call demons. This will also make you vulnerable to all kinds of mischief and tragedies. So paranoia is something very dangerous. It's something that people should pay attention to. Now look, if you are a police officer or if you're working in law enforcement, if you have a job when you encounter danger frequently, look, there are people that encounter danger frequently, but they don't become paranoid. For example, there are people that grow up in hostile environments where there is sex abuse, sex trafficking, where there's drug wars being fought out. So those people are surrounded by danger all the time, but they don't become paranoid. And then you have people who have a very, we will say, a urban, stable, civil existence, and they become paranoid for things you shouldn't even see danger in. So paranoia itself has little to do with the environment. It has to do with someone's way of thinking. Now, I'm not saying that the environment has no impact, but ultimately it has to do with how the individual thinks. That's why scripture makes clear we have to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Now listen to this. Paranoia begins with a pattern of danger that someone attaches him or herself to. And this often happens collectively. I'm going to give an ancient example. Let's say you go back in time, and we're using a historic example now. You lived in Cimbria. Cimbria is the ancient name for Denmark. The ancestors of the white Danish people, they were called the Cimbri or the Cimbrica people. Now the Cimbri had a war against the Romans under Julius Caesar. They were defeated, and as a consequence, they had to surrender, pay tribute to Rome, and Rome gained access to the lands on their roads, because the Celtic people, together with the Germanic people, already had a road system they used to travel. Now the Romans began to use them. Now you have people from Cimbrica they have these folk stories about how the Romans abused them. Most of the stories never happened because the war was fought somewhere at the river, not in the land itself. But all these stories that people develop over time, they create this image of the Romans as this savage beasts that are coming to devour them. Now, for some people in the community, this is becoming a part of who they see how they see themselves. They see themselves as a Cimbrican. That means that as a Cimbrican, you have to be against Romans because Romans are savage beasts. So what happens now? You have this mass paranoia that has developed towards the Romans. Now, I'm not saying that this is what happened in antiquity. I'm using it as an example of how things work collectively, because paranoia most of the time is something collective, not something individual. It's when it manifests in the extreme form with an individual that people begin to pay attention to it, but it's something collective. And paranoia is what demons use to mobilize people into doing things they normally would have never done. Think about Ferguson. Think about those race riots in the USA. I call them race riots because people are against racism, so they join things like Black Lives Matter and they act out their hatred in riots. If you would think about this, okay, so there is so-called structural racism in the culture of the United States. That's something, if you do historical research, there was racism throughout USA history since the foundation in 1776. That's true, but hold on a minute. Till the 1960s, both so-called black communities as white communities had a stable economy. Yes, there was racism, but after the 1960s, they wanted to merge all the communities in USA together as one. And it's there that things went wrong. And that contributed to most of the problems concerning ethnic groups in the United States. Instead of that, people link it all the way to slavery, but it has to do with the 1960s and on afterwards. But people don't do research. And let's say that there is something wrong in the United States. You're not going on the streets destroying stuff because you're making things worse. What's going on? A paranoia has been developed over decades. And the media has played a role in it. And demons are now using that paranoia to control people. Because listen, when you are involved in paranoia, demons have access to you. And because you're not aware of it, demons can make you do things without you being aware of it, and you will later think, what the heck did I do? So understand this. Paranoia is something collective. I'm repeating myself because you need repetition in order to learn things. And one version of mass paranoia that has occurred lately, which is, because listen, before I continue, paranoia is collectively, but you have individual cases that are highlighted by the media and by society to pretend that paranoia is something individual, it's something collective. Paranoia itself is a paranormal operation led by evil spirits. And look at this, when a group of people are into paranoia, demons can, through the human ages, they need people to do this, need people at the media or people at the radio station or artists to do this. They can implant collective memories into people of stuff that never happened. This is how it works. Let's say that you have a group of people that claim that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s. Well, others say, no, he died in the 21st century. Now we have video coverage and document that he died in the 21st century, several years ago. How can it be then that there are people remembering with confidence that he died in the 80s? What's going on here? Such people are under mass hysteria, mass paranoia. And paranoia will always lead to hysteria. Those words, they are similar to one another. They're not the same, but they lead to one another. Paranoia always leads to hysteria. Okay, so what happens now? Someone on YouTube makes a video about he thinking that Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s. Because people are under mass paranoia, this information is getting into their brain. And after a while, this has been repeated by several people throughout the country. And before you know it, many people are remembering something that never occurred. But there's a thing with such collective false memories. They don't last. They may endure for a few months or maybe a year or two, but after a while those memories disappear. And people may even forget that they had such memories. So you may have people, for example, that claim that they witnessed some building collapse somewhere in a city, that they heard bombs. You may even record them on camera. Then a few years later, you ask them about what they've said. They will never not remember it. Even when you show them footage, they can't believe it. It's mass hysteria. And here's the thing. Paranoia can also be a systematic denial of even the possibility of danger, in which people, they are in this so-called safe simulation of reality, which is not reality at all. And look at what I'm saying here. I'm not coming with conspiracy theories and suggesting things onto you. I'm just explaining things that happen. Such things as such paranormal operations have been going on since the beginning of human history. And they're continuing today. And today, you have the mass media and social media that are used as tools in such operations. And look, many of those hoax attacks that you see on the media, those false flags, are also meant to bring the population in paranoia, which will lead to hysteria. So when you hear things like the Mandela effect and such things as parallel universes, those are all paranormal operations. And remember this. When a population is in hysteria, demons have enough waste energy, they have enough negative energy to manifest lies. For example, it can be that, for example, a very easy one, we have a house that's haunted. Now there are objects that are moving inside of that building. You leave your apartment, and after you return back, you see that things are moved. Things are moved a lot. What happened? Due to the abundance of negative energy, demons can use that energy to move things physically. Or it can be that in a certain region, they used to spell a certain company, the name of a company a certain way, but now suddenly in the newspapers, in the books, and also on the internet, the spelling has changed. Normally it takes months for this to happen, and for books that are already printed, that are already documented, you can't change it anymore, right? Well, if in an environment, I'm not saying this is happening often, but it can happen. If in an environment there's so much waste energy, demons can even begin to change things physically. Even though the change is paranormal and it probably will not last for long, it's still enough to confuse people. Because that's the goal of this type of paranormal operations, is to cause confusion. Because when there's confusion, people won't rely on the Most High. People won't rely on the Word of God. That's what it's all about. Now look, When demons are operating through paranoia and hysteria, there is real black magic happening and there are real things shifting and changing. But it's only limited to cause confusion. Such operations exist. Those are operations that will even affect you when you're not aware of it. And look, even if you are spiritually strong and in agreement with the word, you can still be affected by it if your environment is in paranoia or in hysteria. So just be alert of such things. Well, that being said, be at peace and fear not.